Kank. That never gets old. It'll never get old. It will never get old. Guys, hello, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. If you're seeing these three smiling angelic countenances, it must be Wednesday night. That's right. It must be 8 p.m. That's nice, Mike. Guys, welcome back. We have a great show for you tonight. If you've never watched this before, boy, are you in for a treat. Let me explain who we are and what we do. We are three expert cartoonists. That's right. Expert, pinch me, I must be dreaming. Expert cartoonists in the flesh, who also educate and entertain. I'm your first host. I'm JAMAR NICHOLAS, a National Cartoonist Society board member in good standing, and also the author illustrator of Leon the Extraordinary, a series at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint. My newest book, Leon, Worst Friends Forever, is in stores now. Go cop it, why don't you? Guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce one of the webcomic pioneers. I know he hates this. The Johnny Appleseed of webcomics, spreading his seed across the earth.
Oh, what? What?
Well, his comics.
You old seed spreader, you.
Oh, you seed spreader, you. He is known in these web streets as Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, so good to see you. The Oregon Trail of webcomics.
You've died of dysentery.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's on your Webtoons, it's on your Tapas, it's on your Go Comics, and it's available in print if you're into that sort of thing and you don't like trees very much. You can also check out my D&D stuff. The latest book, Nibblemancy, will be coming out this month digitally, and then the print copy will probably finally be shipping to my lovely Kickstarter supporters next month. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the Tower Power, the man of the hour. Too sweet to be sour and rather fetching this evening, I have to say. I love that shirt.
Enjoying that, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. He controls your horizontal. He controls your vertical. He is Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone.
Well, hello, Michael.
Mike Manley. I have been working in the field of comics and animation and illustration for 40 years, and I've been told many times, again this week, that I have probably drawn your childhood. And I'm currently doing The Phantom and Judge Parker for King Features, and I am plotting my return to my self-publishing empire.
Oh, it's very...
What Go on.
Tell us more.
It's
that news was so startling it knocked Jamar off the internet.
he's on his fainting couch with you caught the vapors, Jamar.
I was so
smelling salts.
I was so excited. I fell out of the room. I'm back. Continue. Oh, what I missed?
Nothing. Nothing. Just us chickens.
Well, you know what I found very interesting about your little nod about self-publishing, guys. This is kind of what we're talking about tonight. We're going old school, you guys. We're going back in time.
Unknown caller.
Oh, hold on a second.
We're really going back in time. There's like
old school is new school.
Yeah, it is. So as we talk about a lot on the live cast, this expert cartoonist thing I'm always crowing about is not just a gimmick, you guys. It's real. It's FR. And with that, there's a lot of time in the chair, as my buddy Mike Manley has often said. The only thing that matters is your butt in the chair. And we have been in chairs for a long time. And, just to speak about really quick, my humble beginnings, I may be kind of late to the game, if we're talking about some of the, talk about our guests tonight. I started self-publishing in 1997. Now, to some people, they're like, the 1900s? Is that when that happened? But when
During the First World War.
Steve, can you give me the screen real quick? I wanted to share some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking about the 90s, right? And in the 1990s, we were still kind of before, right? I mean, the internet was a thing, but it wasn't like at its fully operating battle station. So, to get information about things like how do I make comics? How do I get into comics? There weren't a lot of things available. So I actually had to go to the library a lot. Remember those places, Steve? So I still have my collection of tomes that helped me get started in comics. So I'm going to clear these banners so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's one of my favorites. The Business of Comics by Lorene Haynes. Did you see this one before?
No, I've never seen that one. No.
Oh, really? There's a couple of them. This might be this was a collection. The first one was Getting into the Business of Comics by Lorene Haynes, and I think Dave Dorman did the cover for that. So then they made another one, A Writer's Guide to the Business of Comics by Lorene Haynes. What?
And where are they today?
I'm not sure. I really don't know. Maybe our fact checkers could pick it up. And this might have been my Bible. Tony Caputo, How to Self-Publish Your Own Comic Book.
Wow.
Yeah, you remember this stuff, right, Mike?
No, I've never seen any of those.
Because you know what, you were working already. I was trying to get in the door.
By 97, yeah. I was about ready to start self-publishing my own stuff.
What's the publishing date on those?
Well, this might have been early 90s. Hold on. This was 1997. Wow. But I think these other ones, these writers' guides were maybe a little. This has some mysterious stains on it. I don't know what that's about. So
that was post Turtles and pre-Bone?
Yeah, it's like post Turtles. And maybe pre-Bone.
No, Bone was out in 94.
Okay.
90, it maybe came out in 92, 93. Because it was a big deal when the Spirits of Independence tour was happening back in 95. When I got into it, the first one I published in 94 called Avant Garde.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if I say that summons John Gallagher. In 94 with Avant Garde, that was the Gary Reed's Guide to Comics. There was basically this photocopied guide that would be sent we basically passed it around to one another. I don't think PDFs existed yet.
Not yet.
And your Blitz on cartooning.
Yeah.
Wow. My man Bruce Blitz. Well, also here's another one that came a little later that is severely out of date. Digital pre-press for comic books.
Wow.
This is all like none of this stuff even works anymore.
You're using for the first version of Photoshop. Did it come with a bunch of floppy disks?
Yeah, some floppy disks with some CD-ROMs. But like all this stuff was like how you kind of learned how this stuff worked. And what I think is even more interesting about what I'm talking about is that it goes back even further than this. So our guest tonight, Ben Dunn, is a pioneer of the comics publishing scene. Created Antarctic Press back in the early 80s and also just like forged a way into publishing comics and is still here today. And I'll go on record by saying Ben Dunn does not get enough flowers, and I brought him on here tonight to give him his flowers. So if you have any interest in how getting into the comics business works, how self-publishing works, how small press works, you're in for a great treat tonight. And also, Mike, Paul Pate says your shirt is fire. The kids say that means it's good.
Well, thank you.
All right, and before we bring him in, this is hold on, Jared. I'll read that later. All right, so Ben, get ready for rendering. We're going to bring in our guest. Guys are very excited to spend some time with them. Let me get the graphics
Apply
together.
the Zipatone.
Prepare for burnishing. Please welcome to the show, Ben Dunn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Ben. There you go. So
Hello.
hello. So tonight we're looking at Ben's avatar. So we're not doing video tonight, but it's a very lovely picture of you, Ben. So you're here in spirit, and I think we'll have a great time.
Oh, well, yes, indeed. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So maybe we'll get right to it. So as I kind of brought up real quick in introducing you, you started in the business in the early 80s. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Like maybe your really early influences and what kind of steered you into wanting to be a comic book artist?
Well, I've always loved reading comics, even when I was a little kid. I would tear into the Sunday newspaper strips, when we had newspapers, and would just voraciously devour them. And I just had a love for drawing, and I got into when I got into my high school. Someone was looking for an artist for a new comic book in San Antonio, so I applied and I got hired and I drew their comic. And unfortunately, they didn't last long. As a lot of comic book publishers the direct market hadn't really taken off. So it was a venture into newsstand, and it didn't really take off. So unfortunately, but. And then the Turtles came out, and that really inspired me to do self-publishing. So that opened up a lot of doors, and the direct market was growing. So I decided to dip my feet into the self-publishing world, and I've been doing it ever since. We started the company in '85, and we've been going on strong ever since then.
Wow! So you have a big anniversary coming up next year.
That's next year, our 40th anniversary.
Oh, wow! Look at that. I love it. It all lines up. That's fantastic.
There are not many self-publishers who are still doing it after 40 years, are there? I mean, that's a very small group of people.
Yeah, it's over the years, over the decades, we've seen a lot of comic companies come and go, but we're still around.
It's amazing. Was there any hesitation to get into? I mean, what was your mindset when you said, I'm going to start self-publishing? Did you ever just try to find gigs at other companies, or did you just dive headfirst into self-publishing?
Oh yeah, I definitely wanted. Marvel was my big dream job. I wanted to more than anything work for Marvel. That was just like my one goal. But since I wasn't up to snuff to do that, I decided the next best thing was to just self-publish, and at the time I discovered manga, and I just come back from a trip from Taiwan and discovered manga there back in the late 70s and decided to do something manga related, and decided to bring that here to the States, and that's what gave me the impetus to start Antarctic Press, to be sort of a promoter of this art form I had discovered while I was overseas.
Wow, that right there is a giant like flag in the sand. Also, just thinking about the state of manga in the early 80s is not what it is today at all.
Oh yeah, nobody knew what manga was. I mean, if you would go to any comic book store at the time, they would just look at you funny and say, "What are you talking about?
Yeah,
dude, what is this manga?"
Yeah, I mean, I think if you went to Forbidden Planet in New York, right? And I knew a gal in high school. I've talked about this before. You probably knew people like this, Ben, who they had friends in Japan who would send stuff over here, and then they would dub it, right? And that's back when like Captain Harlock and all that stuff was really Battleship Yamamoto, and that was in the early 80s, and there was like a fanzine.
Yes, there was a club there was a fan club at the time called the Cartoon Fantasy Organization that was founded by Fred Patton, who was one of the big promoters of anime. At the time, of course, it wasn't called anime; it was mostly called Japanimation or Japanese.
Yeah.
The word anime hadn't really entered the lexicon at the time, but yeah, in the late 70s, early 80s, the club started. I became an early member of the club, and would attend monthly meetings. And at the time, VHS and beta tapes had just started to come onto the market, and that was how we were able to view anime from overseas,
Yeah.
because the tape librarian was, basically the king of everything, because his tape library was the thing that people coveted more than anything, because it wasn't a common thing to watch anime, especially directly from Japan. Now, on the West Coast, it was pretty common there, but it hadn't really infiltrated the rest of the country. It was mostly just a niche market. It was just a niche fan base. It hadn't really taken off at the time, but it was growing. More and more people were discovering it. And I was definitely a big promoter of both anime and manga. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do Antarctic Press. In fact, our first comic we ever did was called Mangazine, which was a play on the word manga.
Yeah, wow.
Go
ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I was going to say, was this before? This was before Akira, because when I think when it really sort of like blew up in a way was when Marvel reprinted Akira, and I remember Archie Goodwin loaning me his VHS copy of Akira before it was like out, and it was like mind numbing to see something like that at that point.
Yeah, I mean, back in the mid '80s, manga definitely started to creep in, into the comic book stores. I mean, there was a lot of fans of manga who started doing their own manga style, comic. I mean, like, some people point to ElfQuest as sort of the first sort of pseudo manga to come out. Of course, at the time, Stan Sakai started doing Usagi, in Albedo, and then there was other things like Eagle, and Shuriken, and
Sure.
And some people might say that Grendel was sort of a semi, manga style comic book, and then Robotech exploded, and that really catapulted anime into the forefront. And then Komiko started doing the Robotech adaptations, and in fact, one of your friends, was a Manny, I think he did Robotech Defenders. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I worked on Robotech. That was my first job, was assisting on Robotech Defenders for DC.
Yeah, that predates the actual Robotech series, apparently, or at least I think that is. Am I correct?
I'm not sure what the difference is between the Robotech that DC did and then Robotech Defenders, because the Robotech that I did at DC was more like old, like almost like World War II style.
Yeah, the Robotech Defenders that you did for DC was based on an anime called Dougram. Okay, yeah. And most of their mecha was based on that TV show. The Robotech for Komiko was based on the anime Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospida. But for some reason, there was an interesting story about why both of them came. I don't know who came up with. I think Revell actually came up with the term Robotech, and then I think Harmony Go eventually bought the name, or they figured something out. So I don't know what the behind the scenes story is on that, but something must have gone on to switch the Robotech Defenders into the Robotech TV series.
Yeah, I was always very confused about that because, and I remember when I did the comic, I went and bought some of the models to use with helping to draw the stuff. Because I don't think I'd ever seen, I think I'd heard of the other Robotech, but I don't think I had ever seen it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wouldn't blame you, because it was probably pretty difficult to actually get a lot of the source material at the time. I mean, now you can just do a Google search and there it is. Back then you actually had to go out and find it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was the same when I did the Transformers. They had somewhere, I still have it. They gave you like a little binder that had some of the model sheets from the show, but not a lot. And then, of course, you go buy the car, or if you bought, Starscream, the toy didn't look like the cartoon.
Mm.
So you're drawing the comic, and you're trying to figure out, like, well, there's the cartoon, and here's the toy, and you're like going back and forth trying to figure out how to.
Right. Yeah, the toys look remarkably different from the cartoon versions.
Yeah, because the cartoons had to simplify things to make them work for the cartoon.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ben, I have questions. I have a lot of questions, and I have this giant smile on my face because we're just like going back down this memory lane. And I think it's really interesting, the corollary from where we are now and how, like Japanese culture and all of that is just so kind of permanent in the United States, and just the giant love of manga and anime and otaku culture and all that kind of stuff is all in here. But to go so far back when even it wasn't called anime yet, and I remember like almost everybody who's a Gen Xer grew up on Star Blazers or Speed Racer or Battle of the Planets, or things like that. And there's not a lot of it, but it was enough of it. Like I love Marine Boy, and people make fun of me for that, but I love Marine Boy.
And Gigantor and Astro Boy.
Yeah, that's my stuff. When I saw a kid, it was the Eighth Man. I think.
Yeah, Eighth Man was problematic now because he got his powers from smoking cigarettes.
So I mean, it's just really funny it's real fun to just kind of go back in time. But also, I'm really interested about the beginning of you starting to self-publish, and you're doing manga in the States. And was there, like, what kind of early obstacles did you have with that beyond just self-publishing, because that's its own hurdle, but about like the content you were doing at that time?
Well, our biggest problem is actually trying to find a printer. In San Antonio, there was no dedicated, printer who could actually do comics. And so our first comic, we had to go to a printer who could do the interiors, and then we had to go to a printer who could do a cover, and then we had a printer who could do the trimming and the saddle stitching. I had to pick up literally, the interiors of the books and drive them to the next stage of production. And it was a real chore, but thank goodness I found a printer eventually that could do comic book, quote unquote, real comics. But that was the biggest obstacle, to be honest. And of course we had to get accounts with Diamond and Capital City and Heroes World and all the various distributors at the time, and set up accounts for them and ship them out to them, because that was. But actually, the overall process of starting a comic book publishing company back then wasn't really that difficult. You just basically had to set up your business, get in touch with the various distributors, send your solicitation material, and wait for the orders to come in.
And Ben, where were you kind of collecting this information from? Because it seems like you're really kind of really balanced about all this at this early age. Like, okay, this is how it works. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go. How long did it take you to kind of like put all this stuff together to make it work?
Oh, it really didn't take me that long. I mean, all I did was, at the time there was various publications dedicated to comics, like, Amazing Heroes, Comics Journal, things like that, and they would have a list of their distributors inside the book. All I did was just write to them, and say what is the process of getting an account, getting our books distributor, and they would send me the information. As long as I followed the information and abide by their rules, it was really not that hard to actually get an account with all the various distributors. Of course, things back then were a lot simpler. The comic book stores would just order directly from their distributor, and the distributor would send in the comics. It was pretty simple to deal with at the time. I mean, it's pretty much the same now. If you really want the truth,
right.
You go through a distributor, you get an account with a distributor. They you send in their solicitation information. They send you the orders, and then you print it and send it out to them, to the comic stores.
Is that distribution method still is that your primary way of distributing your comics?
It is our primary way of distributing comics. We do a lot of crowdfunding now. We do a lot of digital stuff as well. So we're changing with the times, but it's still our bread and butter, to be honest.
That's great.
Yeah. And I think the threshold or the minimums were different back then, because I remember when I started 96 self-publishing, that's right when Capital City went kablooey, and it changed the numbers from my first issue to my second issue because one of the major distributors was gone. And then Diamond started putting in minimum, where like, if you don't get this minimum amount of orders, we will not carry your book. So did you have to deal with that too?
Oh yes, that was a real pain in the butt. I mean, there was one of those things that we actually thought that we may not be around, because at the time, things were starting to contract, basically. So, and that was one of the reasons why Ninja High School took such a long hiatus, because the book itself wasn't making the minimum order numbers. So it took like a 5-year hiatus before Diamond eventually dropped that requirement, and we were able to get the book back on the schedule again. And now the sales of books are, I mean, no book nowadays would make the minimum order if they were still still enforced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the weird thing, because I remember when I started in 84 in Marvel, if you sold under 75,000 copies, the book was canceled.
Yeah.
Right. That was their cutoff, right? And I was told that if you started selling, like when you started getting down to like 100,000, they were like, I don't know. This is kind of like, and now people would kill for 75,000 copies.
Right.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, of course, you probably remember this, is that the 90s. I mean, we had close to 10,000 comic stores in the country. I mean, it was fairly fairly good times for the comic industry, to be honest. Now there's less than 2,000 left in the whole United States. So there's no way 2,000 stores are able to order those kind of numbers anymore. See, that's the big problem. The industry itself has contracted to the point where it's very difficult for publishers to make any type of a profit to stay in business. I mean, if you really want the truth, if it wasn't for crowdfunding, a lot of publishers would probably go out of business.
Has your venture into crowdfunding created friction with some of your brick and mortar retailers? I see that sometimes bubbling up online and in some online communities. Do you feel that friction?
No, I don't think we have. I think the reason is that because what we offer on Kickstarter is definitely a separate product than what we offer to our retail outlets, and plus for the most part, I think people who go to comic book stores really aren't people who do crowdfunding. I mean, who check out crowdfunding. We think that most of the comic store customers are either regular buyers or people just walk in and check out what's available. Kickstarters are very specifically target orientated, because you're actually going in supporting a particular project, and paying for supporting that right off the bat. So I don't think, as far as we know, there hasn't been really too much friction between that and comic book retailers.
Right. And I would also assume that if you can't, you have to sort of do like you're doing, like a mixture of things, because you've got to move the product. If you can't move product, then nobody has product. The store won't have product. right? So it's like, I think some of the must have been eroding over the last couple of years, especially because of COVID. I think people realize that everybody needs product, because if the business doesn't have product, then, everybody eventually sinks.
Yeah. I mean, that is true. It's just like anything. If you don't have the product, I mean, it's very analogous to like what the movie industry is going through right now. I mean, you have theaters who are trying to make money, but if they don't have product to show on their screens, and then they're not going to make money. And to me, it's all about not just the product; it's the content.
Right.
If you don't have content to get people into the stores to buy, then it's not going to survive. Basically.
I want to go back a little bit more into the granular parts of the beginning of you self-publishing, Ben.
Sure.
So I I was chuckling inside when you were talking about just finding a printer who knew how to do the entire job back then, because that was real. And I remember, even because I started a little later, and now it's still a problem. I remember I had to go to Texas to find a good printer.
There was Brenner.
Oh, well, I tried.
We're at San Antonio.
I remember Brenner, but I think I went through Brenner for one of my first ones, and I found another place. But I also remember calling up print shops, and they went, "Wait, what? We don't know how to do that." So there was a lot of educating the printer to that. Like, no, it's like this, and if you have a web press, you have to do all this information. But my question was, Ben, when you first started out, were you strictly doing black and white, or did you do did you have any color interiors in your book?
Well, the print, of course, back then there were very few actual comic book printers. I mean, I know that Marvel and DC use World Press and Quebecor and things like that, but there were very few dedicated quote unquote comic book printers. You mentioned Brenner, which is located in San Antonio, and we happen to know the guy who actually owns the company, and we got a hold of him. And we're able to start doing our books there. Yes, he could do color for sure, but it's expensive. Color was very expensive, so we unless we knew we could sell, a certain amount of books, it was something that we didn't really pursue. And the thing about it was that the Turtles was in black and white, and it was a humongous success. So the thing is that showed us you didn't have to do a color comic, to really make it big.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as manga was concerned, manga was always in black and white anyway. Right. So it wasn't a big, it wasn't a big transition for us as far as, doing things in black and white. So, color, of course, was the big thing that everyone wanted to go for, but we were quite happy with just doing black and white, and we were selling enough, copies in black and white to justify, our continued existence.
Because the separations, before there was digital separations, doing all that stuff the old-fashioned way was very expensive and time-consuming. Once digital separations came in, it made it a lot easier, because you basically didn't have to have the people in the plant doing all the separations by hand, right?
Exactly.
That's what Richard Corbin used to do. He would do his separations by hand. That's how he did his stuff. But most, you educated yourself on the printing process. In high school, I worked in a printer, so I understood printing process all along from when I was 15. Right, I actually had a vocational high school class, so I understood printing. But a lot of people who start out, if they don't know how to talk to the printer, they don't know how stuff is done. They don't know about the different steps. If somebody printed a circular, remember, it used to always be those circulars everywhere. You'd go any restaurant, any grocery store, there'd always be that junk at the front. It would be all the
penny savers and stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you could print a penny saver, that's basically a comic book, right? You would just want a better cover. So if you could explain that to you, but you would have to find the place that printed the penny saver, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So I don't know when Brenner started, but I used Brenner in 96. But in the 80s, I was going to do a thing with Wally Wood's Annie Man. It ended up not happening, partially because of the money. And it was much more difficult then to find a printer who would print, like you said, that were just dedicated. There were printers that were dedicated to it, but there were not as many. It was not as easy. And like you said, one of the things I actually did too was when you would get reorders from Diamond, I actually packed reorders myself and shipped them to the Diamond warehouses, right? So you have that whole other thing of like filling reorders. If somebody goes, send 3 to Platt, send 7. So I guess you were doing that too, right? Like doing reorders?
I mean, honestly, things really haven't changed all that much, to be honest. I mean, you still have to, the only thing that's really changed is the ability to, there's definitely more printers now who are dedicated to being able to do comic book sized publications, and we can do things are a lot faster and easier now than it was back then. Yes, things were definitely more difficult, to navigate. But once you got into the once you get into the regular routine of it, then it just became just another routine thing you did.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was going to ask about, so we kind of skip right past the content of the books, like what inspired the stories you told at the beginning. Well, how did you decide? Okay, well, I want to publish comics. This is the one I want to do. Because I it seemed like you had you've expressed lots of different ideas over the 40 years. But how did you know which one to start with? And what was that like?
Oh, well, like I said, I was a big manga and anime fan because I was very much into the giant robots, because that was my big thing. Here it was superheroes, and everyone wanted to do superheroes, and that was fine. I love superheroes. I grew up with them, and but when I discovered the giant robot genre in manga, that's really what I want to do. And ironically, the Robotech Defenders you did was based on a series called Dugram, which was one of my favorite anime series at the time. And that inspired me to do my own mecha show series called Tiger X, which is basically a imagined world where the Soviet Union, I mean, a lot of your viewers probably don't even know what the Soviet Union was, but where the Soviet Union had these giant robot mechas that invaded the United States. And it was basically a mashup of Dugram and Red Dawn, basically, because at the time Red Dawn had just come out, and I loved that movie. So it was. Right. I decided to do a mecha version of that.
Wolverine.
So, exactly. So that was my very first manga story, was Tiger X, and then eventually there was an anime series called Urusei Yatsura that came out that I really, really enjoyed. It was like one of the very early teen comedies, anime teen comedies, and that inspired me to do the Ninja High School series, and I've been doing Ninja High School ever since, and number 200 is coming up.
Amazing.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So my next question for you, Ben, is at the beginning of you publishing under AP and putting out your own work. Tell us a little bit about how that started to open up, and because I know like Gold Digger is a really big book.
Well, I knew that I could not rely on myself, to maintain maintain enough material to keep the company going, because I wanted to give other creators a chance to get published as well, and so we started accepting submissions, for us to do, and we sent out let people know that we were looking for submission. Now Fred Perry, who started submitting to us, and at first we didn't really care much for his stuff, but he kept submitting. He would not give up. He just sent, story after story after story. So finally we decided, you know what, we're doing a thing called the Ninja High School Yearbook. Let's go ahead. He did a Ninja High School story. So let's go ahead and publish him there. And I'm a firm believer in anthologies. I love anthology comics, and that's one of the things I'm a big fan of, and and when Fred proposed his Gold Digger thing, Mangazine was coming out, so we stuck it in Mangazine, and it turned out to be fairly popular. And more than anything, we were impressed by Fred's work ethic. He would just keep sending story after story after story, and would not stop. So we figured, God, we got to tap into this guy's energy. We got to give him an opportunity to do something with all that. So we gave him an opportunity to do Gold Digger, and it sold terribly. When the first mini series came out, it was one of the worst selling books we ever had. But we believed in Fred, and we thought as long as he was going to keep doing the book, we would keep publishing the book. And eventually it started garnering a fan base, and now he just celebrated his 300th issue. So
wow.
Yeah. So it was we stuck with him, and he stuck with us. His first book we published was in 1992, and he's been with us ever since.
Wow.
Unsung heroes of publishing right here. I love it. So
yeah, we owe him a lot.
This is interesting, Ben, because I can only speak for myself, but I know a lot of us kind of who started before the aughts and all of that kind of knew that to get into Diamond, you had to have a company name or a small press name. And I had my own goofy name for my thing. And if I thought about it harder, I probably would have made it an A and not an S. But that's a whole other thing.
That was one of the reasons why we called it Antarctic Press.
So my question is, and this is interesting, I remember starting out, I was just so kind of like strapped bare and trying to make things work. I don't think I ever would have thought, hey, I need to bring more people in and publish their stuff. So where did that? I know you just said that we needed to kind of get more content to keep the lights on, but was that like a switch you had to flip to go? You know what? I can't do this all myself. I better bring some more people in, or was that always in the back of your mind to open up the doors?
Yeah, it was always in the back of my mind that I knew we had to have more content in order to maintain a steady flow of product. In order for us to maintain any type of cash flow, you have to have product. And if you don't have product, then you don't have cash flow. If you don't have cash flow, you're going to go out of business. So it was and we were getting submissions. That's the thing, is that once we started getting our comics out there, and it's we sold fairly well as far as independents were concerned. So people were aware of our company, and we started getting submissions from people who wanted to see their books published through us. Because when you're a comic book publishing company and you are out there with your product, then and people see it and are aware of it, then oftentimes if they can't get into like Marvel or DC or one of the bigger publishers, a good route to take is finding a smaller publisher who's more willing to take a chance on you, give you an opportunity, because you take up the same shelf space that a Marvel and DC comics takes up, so you have every bit of an opportunity to be discovered, by a comic book reader, or a customer, as a Marvel and DC, comic book would. The thing is that whether or not your book is attractive enough, or have enough, have enough interest that will get someone to actually pick it up, flip through it, and buy it.
Right.
I love over the course of you being in business, I've never heard one story about Antarctic Press. You know, it's just like, oh, great. Not like, oh, that bid done. Wait till I see him at the con. I'm going to give him a what for. Well, I'll hand him his hat. Like, there's none of those stories about you, Ben. Is there like some sort of like, kind of like a business standard you've always stood on?
Well, I love meeting fellow creators, and one of the things I love meeting up and coming creators. It's one of my things is that I love hanging around with other artists, other comic book fans and things like that, and just talking about comics because it's fun to me. I love meeting people, because a lot of times that's where you can get really good ideas. You share experiences. You pick up you pick up little things, information that will help you. Like, sometimes you can find a new printer through another fellow creator, or you find a new artist, that I should check out, or a new, that's the thing. It's all about communication to me. It's one thing to be a creator, be holed up in your house and just creating comics all day. But I'm also a publisher, and I'm also an editor, and I like to go out and like to meet people, press the flesh, find new individuals, meet your heroes, meet other comic creators, and just have a good time, basically, and make connections. And that's the one thing that I think is really important, in the comic industry, is to make connections. I mean, make new friends, and try to promote, comics to as many people as you possibly can.
I love it.
So, if talking about if younger creators, would you recommend if someone wanted to self-publish? Do you think this is still a good time to self-publish by going through the direct market? Do you think they should aspiring creator should focus on crowdfunding, focus on webcomics? If you were starting today, where would you start?
Well, I would start as to what it is you're offering. If you have a good idea, you have a desire and an impetus to actually want to do a comic book, be it far from me to tell you not to do it. Okay. Because I'm not in your shoes. If you firmly believe in what you want to do is important and that gives you joy, then by all means do it. And the thing is that like, there's no reason why you can't do everything. If you want to do crowdfunding, do crowdfunding. If you want to go to comic books, get into comic book stores, get into comic book stores. If you want to work for Marvel and DC, try your hand and see if you can get work for Marvel and DC. To me, it's all about what you want to do. What is your desire? And sometimes the market is cruel. If you have a desire to do it, and then the market says, no, we're not going to support your idea. But that doesn't mean you should give up. Maybe you need to modify it or change it, or pivot to something that will give you some monetary compensation for you to continue to do what you want to do. Right now, there's a lot of people thinking that the comic industry is on the downturn, but to me, I think comics will always will be there. As long as people will have the desire to draw and create, there will always be comics. Whether there's a comics industry, I don't know. But I think as long as people want to do comics, they'll keep coming out. So yeah, if you want to do a comic, I highly encourage you to do it. You don't. If you have a great idea, the worst thing you can do is keep it locked up in your head. Just get it out there and see what people think of it. I promise you, if you do a comic book, you won't regret it. It'll be yours forever. No matter what, and you at least can say, at least I did it. And whether or not it succeeds, that I can't predict. But if you do a comic, it's there. So you've done it, and it's yours forever.
Ben, I'm loving all of this. I'm loving all of this. One of the things that I did not have in my little mountain of old books was probably the first thing that I've read that kind of shook me up and it was Dave Sims' Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing. It was like a little floppy, and you may have seen it. And it was like a giant splash of cold water, which was basically said the opposite of everything you just said. It's like, run screaming from this business. If you want to find a quicker way to blow your money, be a comic book artist.
Well, he's not wrong in that aspect. But at the same time, there's a certain amount of satisfaction of seeing your own comic book, in real life. Seeing your idea put on paper, and you never know where that'll take you. I'm sure when Eastman and Laird decided to do Turtles, they probably could never imagine it'd be the huge pop culture icons that they are now. Right. To them, they just wanted to do a funny parody comic based Daredevil with a bunch of 4 turtles, and that was probably the extent of what they wanted to do. And so you never know. Like I said, it's one of those things that if you don't try it, you'll never know. And if you don't know, then you could be creating the next big thing. If you don't try it, you'll never know.
Well, the other
always
thing,
take a chance.
And the other thing, I going back to what you were saying before, is that you may do it and it may not, it may flame out.
You may lose money. You may lose
right,
money.
Yeah.
But the thing is that hopefully you'll learn from that. Maybe there's something that if you still want to have the desire to want to keep creating comics, then keep doing it. If you want to give up, I can't stop you from doing that either. But I always believe that if you have that, the thing about love about comic book creators, is that they have such great ideas, and they're so fertile in their imagination. I look at comics all the time and I say, oh my God, it's just such a great comic, and I look at people who are very talented, and I said I feel a little inadequate in my own abilities, but then I think to myself, well, hey, I even though I may not be on the level of some of these artists, I still find joy in doing it myself. I still love being able to create stories, and because if I don't tell them, I'm going to go crazy. That's the thing.
I have studio questions. I didn't know that all of my questions would be so kind of like not pointed at the comics and more about the business. But that's why I'm glad you're here. Thinking about it's like the late 80s and the early 90s, there were a lot more markets to kind of advertise. I'll say that really loosely, your comics or even your publishing house. So I wonder, what was your marketing strategy back then? Was it just getting placement in Diamond? Were you putting, like, I remember when Wizard Magazine came out, and that kind of changed the game in its own way. Were you kind of courting them to put ads in, or in the back of the Comics Buyer's Guide?
Yeah, Comic Buyer's Guide. Yeah, we did all that stuff. I don't know whether or not it actually helped or not. It was actually more of an ego thing, to be honest. It showed if you could afford to buy an ad that we were a legitimate company, because if you didn't have the money to buy an ad, then you weren't really a serious comic book company. So it was just basically a way to show off, to be honest. I don't know how effective it was as far as getting people to buy our comics. We felt that the direct marketing to the retailer was more effective. Point of sales, like posters, things like that, the comic book retailer could stick up on their wall, so that whenever the customer comes in, they would see it and say, oh, hey, that looks like an interesting, comic book. I'd like to order that, so to speak. And so that, to us, was more effective than, actually advertising in, other publications. And advertising in the Diamond Preview or the Capital City thing, we felt that was way more, more bang for your buck. Yeah, as far as reaching, because the retailers who you're really trying to convince, because the retailer, they decide how many books they think they can sell.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can make customers aware of an upcoming book, then they'll tell the retailer, and the retailer will hopefully order it. But that's not always the case. I have people even today say, they want to order an AP book, and some retailers just won't do it, no matter what. So it's just one of those things you got to overcome, and hopefully, there's enough, we sell enough to stay in business.
Yeah, I experienced a little bit of that when I was self-publishing, and the fact that you try to figure out, like you said, what's the most effective return for your advertising dollar. And then I remember I got a list, and I called around to retailers, and I found that there were two kind of retailers: a small percentage of retailers who would order independent books, and then the rest of the retailers that would never order your book no matter what, because it didn't have Wolverine in it.
Right. Yes. That was the most difficult thing to overcome. And fortunately, there were enough retailers out there that ordered independent books, because some independent books actually started to become popular. People actually were starting to ask for them. When Kamiko was hot, and Eternity Comics was hot, things like that. So, and plus, it provided at least something different from the standard Marvel and DC material.
Right. Ben, with you being in the game so long, I'm sure that your company could have been affected by the trends or the waves in how comics have been, there's kind of like hot and cold streaks with comics even as a collecting hobby. And I think about some of the gimmicks that have happened over the years that are kind of being celebrated again now. People are really excited about like foil covers and even the Bad Girl era of comics, where everybody was like, Boobarella or whatever. So I wonder, how did any of that affect your business, or did you feel like there were points where you had to just, let's try this, or let's shoot bullet holes into the cover of this book and see how it sells?
Yeah, that's the beauty of comics, because comics you could do almost very quickly. So if there's a trend, you could actually take advantage of that very, very fast. It's not like a movie or TV show where it takes a lot of time and a lot of people to actually create something. You could create a comic, today. If you're fast enough, you could do a comic in a couple of days if you really wanted to, and get it out there. And we like to as far as our company philosophy is concerned, we learned very quickly you cannot take down Marvel and DC. To go head to head with them would be suicide, in my opinion. So what we try to do is we focus on things that we like, and focus on things that no one else is doing. Like we try to cater to niche markets like the furry market or steampunk, or doing anthology titles, things like that, so we provide at least an alternative to what Marvel and DC are doing, because quite frankly, there's no way we'll ever compete with them head to head as far as doing superheroes are concerned. I mean, granted, we still like to do superheroes, but we like to do superheroes on our own terms. We like to do things that we enjoy doing, and hopefully other people, will also like what we're doing as well. So slowly, that's always been sort of our philosophy, and it's sort of worked for us, over time, and then that's basically how we stay in business.
I had a question about. I know that in the beginning, you had the Japanese stuff coming over. People were very big into, well, now they call it the weeb culture, where people are really into it, and it being very authentic, and they're into the authentic thing. So I'm interested in you as an American doing the Japanese style. What was the feedback from the fan of that type of, that, I don't know, I guess genre. I mean, it was sort of looked at as a genre. I don't even know if you could really consider it a genre now, because like what seemed to be sort of like fringe or genre is like mainstream now. Like anime is just like normal.
Well, I mean, it's like anything new at the time. I mean, manga was not prevalent in the 80s and the early 90s. I mean, it was starting to come into its own. I mean, so we got the people who wanted to read manga and anime had very few choices, so they just basically took what they could, but as more and more anime and manga started coming over, then they had more choices. They had more things to choose from. I know that Eclipse Comics was contacted by Viz, and they started doing, manga, and that was their foothold into the American comic market. And even then, manga really didn't take off until just in the last 10 years. Because manga has always been sort of like this niche thing for the longest time. But for some reason in the last 10 years it exploded. I don't know why exactly that was the case, but maybe it was because people are just looking for something different, or maybe there's a connection between anime and manga, and then people are starting to connect the two. I mean, I've always been a big fan of it, but it to me was always sort of a niche thing. But only in the last like 10 or 15 years it started to really blow up, and now it's become mainstream, and it's become incredibly popular. Now I don't know how long that's going to last. Will this be a permanent thing that will last a long time, or is this just simply a phase that's going on in the market? It's hard to say at the moment. But and the thing about manga is that manga there's a lot of turnover in manga. Manga that was popular in the 80s, people don't remember anymore.
Right.
People manga in the 90s, they don't remember anymore. And I predict that the manga that people are reading now will be forgotten in 10 years.
So they won't be reading One Piece in 10 years?
That may be an exception, because it's so popular and ingrained in people's psyche. I'm sure people who grew up with One Piece will remember it. Whether or not it is popular with a new generation of readers remains to be seen. Maybe a new generation of readers will find something else that's better, or they may consider One Piece old-fashioned. They say, "Oh, that's not for me. This is my new thing here." And that's the thing about manga, is that there's a lot of turnover. In manga, there's very few manga that stands that has a lot of longevity. There are exceptions, of course, but manga usually has a very high turnover. Because the Japanese reading public is very fickle about what's new and different.
All right. Okay, I have a question or two from our good buddy Nick Waters. Hold on, one of the things just disappeared. So Nick asked a question, and I wasn't sure about the origins of one of these. But how did AP start bringing over manga like World War III and Cat Shit 1?
Well, we wanted to do authentic manga, but there was no way we were able to get into the upper echelons of the like Shueisha and so we decided to go. We started to go on the low end. Now, what I mean by that was that at the time there's a convention in Japan called Comic Market. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, or it's something Comic Cat. It's called Comic Cat. Yeah, it's twice a year. It's a big, huge manga doujin thing, and our doujin is basically a fanzine, where Japanese fans have these clubs and they produce their own, homemade manga. And usually a lot of it is just basically their own. They're basically fanzines of popular anime and manga or whatever subject matter they're big fans of. I mean, I've seen doujin of, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Star Trek, all the Sesame Street. You'd be surprised what kind of subject matter
Amazing.
they'll do. Yeah, it is crazy. So back in the early '90s, we were making headway, into the we were making headway in doing our own manga. So somebody from Japan, I had a fan, I had a pen pal in Japan that we would trade toys and videotapes. Okay, so at that time I got myself a VHS machine, and he was a big fan of American superheroes. He loved American superheroes. He loved G.I. Joe. He loved American TV shows. So I would record them for him, and he would send me anime. Okay, and he would also buy toys for me, and I would buy toys for him. I mean, I would buy him G.I. Joes, I would buy him Transformers, I would buy him Sectars, and he collected that stuff, So, but he would send me Japanese toys. So he had a club called the Comic Lovers Association, which was his group, that celebrated American comics because he loved American comics. And he got in touch. He had a table at Comic Kit. He got in touch with a guy there who was the head of Comic Kit, and he was interested in promoting Comic Kit here in the United States. So he invited us to attend Comic Kit as guests, and to check out the talent that was studying up there. So we went there, back in like 92, 93, we flew to Japan. This was just as the Japanese yen was became increased in value, and so the Japanese yen became more powerful, basically. So we came at the wrong time. We should have gone in the 80s when the yen was just like 300 yen to the dollar, like 600 yen. So when we got there, it was like 150 to the dollar. So it wasn't as good a deal. But anyway, we went there, and he showed us around. He gave us a tour, and it was huge. I had never seen anything like this. I mean, 100,000 people came to Comic Con. It was huge, and he introduced us to several, up and coming creators that he thought we would like to meet, and we met them. We made deals with all of them, and we started bringing manga from Comic Kit into Antarctic Press, and that's where we started doing manga.
Wow.
We also, while we were in Japan, we also went to some small publishers. Like I said, there was no way we were going to be able to meet with the big guys, but we were able to meet smaller publishers. And a lot of people don't know this, but there's almost as many publishers of comics and manga in Japan as there are probably publishers here in the United States. There's hundreds of them. Okay, and so we got in touch with a few. And mostly they were doing adult manga, so we got in touch with a few of them and said, and we talked to the people there, and we said, we'd like to bring some of the adult manga over, because that was something no one was doing at the time. So we made some deals, and we started bringing over adult manga, so one of the things we did was like Bondage Fairies and Ixer One and things like that, and that's how we started doing adult manga. Now, our biggest mistake was that we hired a guy named Kuni Komuro who basically screwed us on our deals with Japan. And we didn't know it at the time, but basically he was spreading a lot of bad stuff about us, because I think he wanted to do his own thing. And his way of doing it was to make us look bad. So we lost a lot of our deals. That's why we stopped doing manga back in the late 90s, because of that. And then a lot of the stuff that we were doing went over to Studio Iron Cat, which was Steve Bennett's, company. And he ended up doing a lot of the manga we would have, ended up with. Now, we don't have any ill feelings for Steve, but I totally hate Kuni Kimura now. And so that's why we started. But then recently we got a hold of the guy who did Katshiban Motofumi. And because I basically just wrote to him. I said he has a Facebook account, and I love his Cat Shit 1 stuff, and I love his World War II stuff. And I just basically just cold called him and said, hey, I love your stuff, been a big fan of it. Would you be interested in letting us publish your stuff in the United States? And he said yes. And I said, oh, well, that's cool. So we made a deal with him, and we started, publishing his stuff. And then I met Toshio Medea, who does, Adventure Kid and Uroshiki Doji in Mexico. And I talked to him and said, hey, are you interested in letting us publish your work in the United States? And he said, yeah, sure. So we made a deal with him. Sometimes the best deals come when you just ask people. Just go up to them and say, hey, are you interested in doing something with us? And I always say the worst they can say is no, and then you're on your way. But
was the work translated when you received it, or did you find yourself responsible for that part of it?
Oh, we're responsible for the translation. So we hire translators to translate the material for us.
Wow.
So and to me, it's always about, taking chances. I always say that, like I said, the worst, you should always get the courage to talk to people, and ask them, get to know them and ask them straight up, are you interested? And I always say the worst they can say is no, then, you're on your way. But if they say yes, then
right,
doors can open.
I love it. So there's a follow-up from Nick. He has another question for you, Ben. Also, when are we going to see more Twilight X, Ben Dunn?
Ask Joe White. We've been trying to twist his arm for years to get him back to doing Twilight. I'm still owed a Shotgun Mary comic, for God's sake. Joe White will be at the Antarctic Press fan bash in March 15th, so you can ask him directly.
You hear that? You heard it here, Nick. Thanks for your question. So I had a talking about Comic Cat, which is interesting, and Nick's been a couple of times. He's a good friend of the show. Now, to just kind of realize the scope, I feel like Comic Cat is like 3 San Diegos on top of each other.
Yeah,
right?
It's huge.
It's huge. You think New York Comic Con is bad? You go to Comic Cat. So, and I think that's kind of like a shock for a lot of Americans to think, like, oh, like this stuff is bigger someplace else. So it's time for somebody's pill. What was that? So, another question I have been about cons. Does AP set up at any shows at this point, or do you have like a schedule of exhibiting?
Well, we do a lot of local shows, and we very rarely go to other shows other than San Diego. San Diego Comic-Con is the one show that we do every year. We've been there since like 93. So we've been there every year since 1993.
Wow.
You got your spot.
Huh?
You've got your spot.
We've been in that spot, for like 15 years. So it's like prime real estate as far as San Diego Comic-Con is concerned. But the thing is, it's just gotten more and more expensive, over the years, and we're actually considering whether or not it's worth, continuing to set up there, because every year it gets more expensive, and the rate of return is getting less and less. So, but sometimes every time we feel like, should we go next year? We make just enough to convince ourselves, yeah, let's just go next year. So, and we, like I said, a lot has changed in San Diego, since 93, but we are, we're old timers as far as setting up there is concerned.
So, Ben, about your kind of booth presence, do you kind of bring a commando crew of people with you? Is it just like a strong 4 people? You just handle the whole week, or how does that usually get made out?
Yeah, we have a couple of guys who go there every year. We set up. We sell mostly back issues, and we have artists who come and set up and talk to to our fans and stuff. So yeah, we don't really have a big display. We're just there because it's kind of our way to connect with our fans and readers, and it's also an excuse to go visit other creators, look for new talent, and just have a good time.
That's fantastic.
When you say looking for new talent, is that people to write and draw, or people to draw, or people to write?
Well, we're a creator-owned company. Unless it's a company-owned product, we only look for people who can actually create and submit a completed, book. For the most part, we very rarely look for artists and writers unless we're doing our own. When we were doing Warrior Nun, we were hiring a lot of writers and artists at the time, but for the most part, we are looking for talented creators who have their own thing, basically.
Gotcha. And because you mentioned it, and I think some people might want to hear your take on this, and saw a couple of interviews that you've talked about this. Can you talk a little bit about some of your more, I guess, flagship titles at AP, just for people to hear about it? And I'm sure there's a Warrior Nun story in there somewhere.
Well, of course, we did Warrior Nun back in the 90s, but I sold the rights to Avatar Press, so they own it at the moment. Of course, Ninja High School has been around since '87, and
those kids didn't graduate yet.
Actually, they did. I'm on version 3 right now. So every 10 years, I like to switch up the cast because I don't want to keep it stale. That was one of the things I wanted to avoid was the Archie syndrome, where Archie was always a teenager and would remain so forever. I actually wanted the series to change, with the times. So, but people still like the old, whatever cast version they like. It's still available for them to enjoy. So, and I'm not against, bringing them back if somebody does a good story, with them. And of course, we have Gold Digger, which ended with issue 300, and then we had Twilight X, which was a big thing. So those are basically the only, and of course now we're doing Tomorrow Girl, which is my thing, and we're doing. I'm starting to create more Antarctic Press centric IPs, because with the because of the Warrior Nun TV series that came out on Netflix, the guy who actually pulled that deal together wants to do more AP, centric IPs. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing more and more company-owned product as well as creator-owned product.
That's fantastic. I was looking at Kickstarter. It says you've created 52 Kickstarter campaigns. That's that's an amazing number to me. Is there are you all in on Kickstarter? Have you looked at the others? What's your experience with Kickstarter been like?
Well, Kickstarter is a mixed blessing. I mean, on one side, you do tend to rely on it for income, and to help spur, in other words, to get income in order to see projects, to fruition. On the other side, they are gatekeepers, so they can and will turn down projects if they don't think it fits their parameters. So that's the only, to me, that's the biggest drawback going through a crowdfunding site, is that you don't have total say. You have to still go through the process of being accepted. So in a way, that's sort of like an editor at a publishing company. I mean, for the most part, they usually just let most people decide, but every once in a while you'll get one they'll say no to.
Really? Have you looked at alternatives like Crowdfunder or BackerKit or Zoop?
Yes, I have. And unfortunately, they're not on the same level as Kickstarter. I mean, there's no doubt that Kickstarter is the, 100-pound gorilla, but should and Indiegogo is another fairly, is a fairly good alternative. Not always, but it's still it's like sort of the DC of crowdfunding. And I mean, Kickstarter is definitely the Marvel of crowdfunding, but it's sort of like, I can't get on Kickstarter, so I think I'll go to Indiegogo. So it's there's really no comparison between the two. Definitely Kickstarter is the big, but hopefully, as time goes on, more and more crowdfunding alternatives will pop up, and there's no law that says you can't use every single one of them if you wanted to. So, you might as well, if you're willing to put in the work, go on all the crowdfunders and see how successful you are doing it that way. I mean, money is money no matter where you go. So you might as well give it a shot.
That seems to be a recurring theme. I really love that. The idea of just, try it all. See what works.
Yeah.
And, that's really great. Is there for your Kickstarters, is there a strategy or there are any lessons that you might share with people about, do's and don'ts?
Well, just be aware of what you're doing. Okay, that's the one thing. Educate yourself on how to do it. A lot of people make the mistake of not taking into account things that you may not think about, like postage. Doing too many add-ons. I mean, doing many stretch goals. Just doing stretch goals of product that is bulky. That will add to your postage, and it'll be inconvenient. You have to look at crowdfunding projects that have failed just as much as the ones that have succeeded. This way you can avoid the pratfalls of a lot of Kickstarter. And also, be realistic in your goals, especially if you're a first timer. If you're first starting out and you haven't proven yourself, both by your product and your reliability, trying to set a very high goal and expecting people to support you may be a mistake, and because people can look at it and say, well, he's asking $15,000 for a 32-page comic. I mean, it may be worth it, but a lot of people say, whoa, that's a lot of times, believe it or not, it's more convincing to have your campaign be funded quickly and successfully, than to try to ask for something that may be realistic, to you, but may be off-putting to backers, and you have to look at it's a psychological thing just as much, as a creative thing, because then because there is a lot of psychology that goes into, doing a Kickstarter. People like reliability, or they see a project that looks, good, and they're willing to back it. But if you're asking too much, they may think, oh, this thing will never get fulfilled.
Right.
So it's sort of a double-edged sword, if people think that's not going to be fulfilled, they may not back it.
Right. Oh, this is fascinating. Ben, how are you doing on time? Do you want to start wrapping up? You good for a couple more questions?
No, I could take a few more questions. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
All right, thank you. I'm glad when people say that.
I had a question because you're wearing all these hats. How do you break up your day or your week, or like when do you put one hat on, take another hat off?
Well, that's actually, I have a routine every day. I get up, do my social media stuff, check out my emails, put out any fires that need to be put out. I immediately email everybody that needs to be emailed, because I don't like to keep people waiting. If someone sends in a submission, I usually try to I usually try to answer within 24 hours, because I don't like it myself when, I'm forced to wait on a reply on a submission, or, the status of something, because I try to be very timely in that. And then after I've done all my morning routine, I just usually uh, have lunch, and then I try to force myself to do at least 1 page a day of artwork. Because to me, that is the most important thing, is to create something every day. In my philosophy is that you do 1 page a day, and in 1 month you have 30 pages done. So and you have 30 pages done. That's a comic book that you can put out every month. And if you put out something every month, then you have people will start. Then you have something regular, and you want to make people into habit buyers. You want them to start relying on you to put out something, every on a regular basis, so that they can expect that. And that's what comics to me is all about, is to put something creative out every month. Now, sure, people can spend years and years and years on a graphic novel. That's fine. If people are willing to wait for that, that's perfectly okay. I'm not willing to wait that long. So that's my own personal, thing, is that I I'm very antsy. I like to keep things going. If I don't, I'm like a shark. I have to keep swimming. Because I don't swim, I'm gonna, slow down, and I'm just gonna fall to the bottom of the ocean and expire. So I also like to keep my mind going, because I'm always coming up with some new idea, and I just got to keep at it, because if I don't, then I'm afraid that I'll atrophy and just lose, all desire to create something. So I always try to keep it going, keep it going, come up with the next idea, and just keep going, because to me, I find joy in that, and I have fun with it. And I'm lucky in that I can draw my own stuff, and if I wasn't able to draw my own stuff, then I would have to hire an artist. And that's where the difficulty comes in, because then you have to pay that guy, the artist, and that's where you have to raise the money. For me, since I can draw my own stuff, I don't have to worry about that aspect of creating comics.
Mm-hmm. I had a question, kind of going back into the past, because I can't seem to get I can't get out of the past, you guys. It's like a
nothing wrong with that.
Recurring theme.
What's old is new again.
I would love for you to talk really quick about how, like, the couple of like waves of manga kind of hitting the U.S. Affected Antarctic Press. Like, I think about when Tokyo Pop showed up, and I think about how, like, Viz was kind of like always in the background somewhere, but they started really pressing. Did any of that affect you? Did you feel a need to, like, maybe change your formatting from, like, comic book floppies to more like
the Borders girls?
Yeah, right. Yeah, or even like the girl sitting in the middle of the aisle at Borders reading all the manga.
I actually think it's a great thing, because now, back in the day, we had to flip manga art, because that was the only way comic book stores would accept it, is that we had to reverse the artwork. Now, people can read manga as it actually was supposed to be read, in the proper format.
Right.
And now I'm also noticing that there's changes in sizes of the comics now that are being more rarely accepted. The so-called manga size, or the digest size, as they like to call it. So, the actual, it's no longer just the 32-page floppy anymore in a standard size. More people are being accepted of different formats, different sizes, different genres. And I think that's a good thing. As long as people are reading comics, it doesn't really matter to me what the size is, what the format is, whatever. To me, the most important thing is just to get people to read comics, and to support the creative endeavors. I love manga, but I love comics. I like European comics, I like American comics, I like manga comics, I like Mexican comics, I like Brazilian comics. I mean, to me, comics are a perfect expression of creativity that anybody can do if they really wanted to, because it's so simple. The point of entry for comics is very low. What is it? A piece of paper and a pencil, and you can start creating comics. It's not like a movie or TV show or anything else where you have to have hundreds of people, thousands of dollars in order to create. I mean, it's starting to change now. I've seen stuff on the internet now where people are using AI to create these movies. Animation is simpler now than ever before because of programs. So the whole art landscape is starting to change. But comics will always be, to me, the simplest entry point, for creativity, because all you need is a paper and a pencil. In fact, now you don't even need that anymore. People draw on computers, which is fine if you have a computer. But as far as if you don't have one, paper and pencil, you can start creating comics.
Are you paper and pencil, or are you on the computer?
Oh, I'm paper and pencil all the way, baby. I'm just too old not to do that. Plus I just like looking at physical artwork. I like holding it. I mean, it's more. You do have to buy paper and you have to buy art supplies, which is fine. I'm used to that. But the ability to create something from nothing is something I love doing. Now, yes, I do digital stuff too, because it's convenient, but the thing about digital is you can't sell it. You can't exchange it to somebody else. It's digital. Okay. So it's just, it's on your computer. So unless you print it out as a print, nobody can actually hold it or feel it. And to me, part of the aesthetic of artwork is that you can hold it and feel it and see it, and that's as far as I'm concerned, I'll probably never change that.
I love it. So Steve, do you want to do these start questions?
Yeah, there weren't so much. Well, there's one question, and then it was the chat has been buzzing. Lots of praise, lots of love for the discussion. But starting off with the question, combination question comment from Tim Fielder on Facebook. Your information is quite fascinating. Is there a site where what you're saying is written down, or do you have that on a site somewhere? Is there a central place where you put your self-publishing thoughts? Is it over on your Facebook? Is it over on bendunn.com?
Most of my train of thought is on Facebook or on my webpage, on my website. I also have a YouTube channel where I blather, for a couple of minutes, which if something stuck in my mind, I got to share it with the world. I put it on my YouTube channel, But for the most part, most of my train of thought is on my Facebook page.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because I'm old, and that's what I use.
Thanks for the question, Tim. And then just highlighted some of these lovely comments. Ken and James, previous guest of the show, fantastic artist. He just says, "Let's work together again, Ben." So,
hell yeah, let's do it.
Love that. And I call Shogun regular here on Pencil to Pencil. AP Antarctic Press books were a big part of my intro to comics that weren't Marvel in general. So that's a recurring theme throughout the conversation. A lot of people, their introduction to indie comics was Antarctic Press. So just praise up and down.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. I to me, it's always sometimes you kind of wonder, well, is it all worth it? Do I even want to even bother anymore? But, and then I look at the comics and I say, yeah, it's worth it. It's always, to me, it's all about just creating something new, creating, sharing your ideas, and as long as people still want to buy and read comics, I'll keep doing them,
That's fantastic. And Nick, who commented previously from YouTube, I always wanted to submit to Antarctic Press, maybe before I die. LOL.
It's very easy. All you do is send it to me, and I'll be more than happy to look it over and see if it's something we can use.
And there'll be a prompt response.
Oh, absolutely. I promise to respond within 24 hours.
Amazing.
Oh, Ray Anthony.
Thanks, Nick.
I just showed up. Studio Sky Tiger just says, our good buddy Ray Anthony Height. I was a big fan of Gold Digger in Ninja High School. Look at all these fans. I love it. You're getting a lot of love here tonight, Ben.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone.
Um,
Appreciate it.
well, a couple more questions, and then we'll let you out of here. How do you feel about, because it seems like you have such a really warm, devoted fans, and it seems like you've also helped a lot of people along your comics journey. How do you feel about mentorship or apprenticeship at your point in your career? Do you have anybody you've kind of like helped up the ladder, or do people come to you for advice that you kind of don't really talk about? You just give it and keep it moving. How do you feel about that?
I don't know how much advice that, but I'm more than willing to help anybody out. If it's something that need advice on, and I can honestly help, I'll do whatever I can to make it so. It's to me, I think we need more and more creative people in the industry, because life's too short not to enjoy things. And that's the thing I really do feel strongly about, is that if I can help someone in any way I can, then I'll be happy to do so. It's one of those things. To me, the whole idea of creating something, and seeing somebody's idea come to fruition is something it makes me very happy.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. All right, you guys. Oh, well, maybe we'll do this and then we'll let you out the door. So what's coming up next for your big 40th anniversary, and what's on the plate at AP?
Well, I've got a lot of stuff on my plate right now, and of course, I'm doing the Tomorrow Girl and Ninja High School series. I edit a whole bunch of the AP anthology books, including Exciting Comics, Planet Comics, Jungle Comics. And I'm doing a crossover with Dave Sim. You mentioned him before. Doing a Ninja High School Cerebus crossover.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And I'm doing a Tomorrow Girl Megaton Man crossover. So I'm working on that, and I'm just thinking up the next crazy idea, and hopefully it'll come to fruition.
That's fantastic. Oh, and tell us, Ben, about your AP Bash. Tell me about that.
Yes, it's being held on March 15th. It's one day only. I don't remember the location, but it's on the AP Birthday Bash Facebook page. The location is there. It's March 15th. It's absolutely free. You can come and spend a day with AP creators, both past and present. I'll be there. Joe White will be there. Fred Perry will be there, among a host of other people. We are doing a all you can carry comic book giveaway. What we're going to do is we're going to empty out our AP warehouse and just dump it at the convention, and you could take as many books as you can carry. No limit. So we're just going to have a good time. We're going to have food. We're going to have fun. We're going to have a bunch of creators. Promoting their projects and doing commissions and things. It's just a one-day fun fest, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Wow, that's fantastic. And nimble-fingered Steve Conley just put Norris Conference Center in San Antonio. So I think I may be on my way to Texas.
We would love to have you.
That's fantastic. All right, Ben, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I always like to put my co-host on the spot. Any last words from you guys before we sign out?
Well, just keep creating comics. Support your local comic book store, and hopefully, if you're a comic book creator, I only wish the best of luck.
Awesome. That sounds good. That's great. Mike, Tim. I'm sorry, Tim. Mike or Steve. Anybody else want to?
It was very nice to chat and to go through the timeline, because it's a very different timeline compared to like a lot of regular regular, regular small press and in the regular, the mainstream industry, and now it's, what one day seems like a fringe thing, the next day it's like normal.
Well, the important thing is that you're happy with what you're doing. See, that's the important thing.
I love it.
That's why we sit in the chair, right?
Absolutely.
Love your positivity. It's beautiful. I'm just gonna if I'm ever feeling down, I'm gonna rewatch this episode.
Or just give me a buzz. I'll lift your spirits up.
I love it. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for tonight. Mike, do you want to put? Wait a minute. What's our calendar looking like? Are we off next week? No. Oh, right. Yeah. Next week we have. You want to talk about our guest next week, Mike?
Oh, next week we're going to have Mitch O'Connell on the.
Fantastic.
And that'll be, I think, very interesting because I think he and I have some paths crossed back in our origin days. So that'll be interesting to see. Again, there's the world of cartooning is really, really broad, and I think it's even broadening out. I mean, that's the other thing I think is that there's all these new generations of people coming along that can also benefit from the previous generations,
Mm-hmm. I love it. So you heard it here first. See us back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST. For my co-hosts and myself, we had a fantastic time. Thanks again to Ben Dunn. Give Ben Dunn his flowers. He deserves them.
Appreciate it.
All right. And we're going to get out of here. But I would be remiss if I did not tell you.
Right. We can't see his
we can't see him Kirby hand.
We'll need an avatar of his Kirby hand.
We'll do Tezuka fists. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, guys. We'll see you later. Good.
All right, you guys take care. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Good night.